Hey, friends. Welcome to the Divorce Clarity Studio on WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio, Podcasts, and TV. I'm your host, Lisa Lisser, CEO and founder of LZL Coaching, a boutique coaching firm focused on divorce, relationships, and life transitions. As a former lawyer, a current Jewish educator, nonprofit leader, and divorced mom of 3 now grown kids, I can safely say my life has not followed a straight line. I mean, I never thought I'd be a podcast host. But the fact is, post-divorce, I was able to create a new framework for my identity, a framework that lifted up the strengths that were hiding during my marriage. My hope is that this podcast provides you with information that can help you navigate the turbulent waters of divorce. I share the mistakes many people make during divorce, including my own, and the wisdom of experts who work in the divorce support space. My goal is to raise up stories that let you feel seen, give you inspiration to move forward, and foster the courage to stand on your own 2 feet. Ultimately, the Divorce Clarity Studio is here to help you feel less alone, more informed, and more aligned with your values. Today's show is titled Getting Real with a Couples Therapist with Carolyn Sharp. A little about Carolyn, my guest today. Carolyn is not the kind of couples therapist who hands out a workbook and calls it progress. She works deeply in connection, helping couples and individuals understand the nervous system patterns underneath their patterns, the reasons the same argument keeps showing up time and time again. She's the author of the award-winning book, Fire It Up, 4 Secrets to Reigniting Intimacy and Joy in Your Relationship, and her TEDx Hartford talk, Connection Equals Survival, makes the case that what divides us in relationships and in the wider world is not so much a failure of love, but rather a failure of curiosity and connection. With more than 30 years of experience and deep training in PACT, the psychobiological approach to couples therapy, Carolyn also works specifically with parents after divorce, helping them build the healthiest possible co-parenting relationship for their kids. She brings lived experience to this work, having navigated her own divorce and blended a family of 4 teenagers. Now that's a challenge. Carolyn, welcome to the Divorce Clarity Studio.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's wonderful to be here.
It's great to have you. You know, you and I met through a networking group, and we had a conversation, and just the conversation kept flowing. Like, we had so much to talk about. So I am thrilled to bring you on. And this probably is the first of many, because there are so many aspects to your work that I'd like to get into with my clients, or my audience. But first, we'll start at the beginning. Tell us your story. What inspired you to do this work?
Well, I think the statistic for helping professionals is that 97% of us, or something like that, come from messed up backgrounds. And so I come from a family with great love and lots of resources, but also with addiction and mental health issues. And so I came along later, 5 and 7 years behind my sister and brother. And at that point, my parents had very little bandwidth for my care and attention, and my brother and sister were off playing. And so I spent much of my childhood sort of in, what would probably be termed neglect. They loved me, but they really just didn't have capacity. And so there was a lot of trauma and there was a lot of neglect. And I grew up very sensitive, aware that the situation I was in was not good for me. It wasn't good for anyone. And so I sort of set out to provide for kids and families what I didn't have, what I knew they needed. And that's how I became a social worker. And I worked with kids in foster care and supervising therapists for kids in foster care and kids who were, really struggling. And then when I had my daughter, I broke out into private practice and started working with kids, teens, families, and then finally landed on couples, as I learned that was really the most powerful way to help children was to help their adults. Because we are continually, all of us, modeling for the next generation what is healthy, what is normal, what we need, how to do it. And we can either do that well, or we can do it poorly. And so I'm on a mission to create a more loving, kinder, more connected world.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And for so many of us, we're doing this work because of the challenges we face in our own lives. And
Exactly.
what that shows us is that everyone faces challenges, and everyone can have a, a zone of support that maybe they felt was missing. And creating that for other people, for me at least, has been such an honor, and it has helped me grow more into my own strength and power. But I get there because of the support I'm giving to other people.
Yeah. Well,
So,
none of us grow from ease. We don't grow from comfort. It is the challenges in life that force us to grow, to learn. It's falling down that teaches us how to get up and how to get stronger. So we all need that challenge in order to grow. And it's finding our people and creating that network to help us learn the lessons we need to learn.
yeah, that's so true. And so when you speak in that way, it brings me to the topic that we're on today, which is getting real with a couples therapist, right? So where is it that, we can really get real? What does it mean, especially for couples who think they already know what's wrong, or for couples who think like, okay, this is my last ditch effort. Like they're already 1 foot out the door. Like, how does that work?
Well, the first thing that I'm doing with a couple or with an individual is having them reset what they're looking at, because, and I feel, I really believe and see this every day, the epidemic of pointing the finger away from ourselves, blaming the problems, blaming the challenges on another person or a group of people, if you want to go national or worldwide. And so when a couple or an individual comes to me, my question is always to each individual in the situation is, what's your contribution to the problem? What's your contribution to this challenge? Because we have no capacity to control or to change another person. The only person we have influence over is ourselves. So it's much easier and much more comfortable to say my partner, my spouse, my husband, whatever is the problem, but you chose that person. You found yourself in the relationship with this person, whether you're marrying them, divorcing them, co-parenting with them or whatever. And so you have to look at, how did I get here? And what am I contributing to this struggle? Because it takes two people for there to be a fight, an argument. And so the only person you have influence over is yourself. And so that's one of the places that I really get real with people, and I make people very uncomfortable, often very irritated with me. I do draw on my own experience and point out my own issues in that, because as a professional couples therapist, as a relationship expert, I too struggle. I mean, it's the hardest thing we do as adults is be in intimate relationships. They're the hardest thing, in friendship and work. Relationships are the hardest work we do, and I'm not free from struggle. So I'll use my own examples of ways I screw up to help people feel less shame and less hesitancy to say, well, I'm being too critical, or I'm being too focused on the negative, or I'm leaning into fear too much, or, millions and millions of examples.
Right. Like whatever it is. But what I'm hearing, and what I also see in my own clients who come in and say, well, this could work if they change and they get help and they do this and they do that. And I invite them to roll it back and say, okay, what if none of those things happen? What are you willing to do? And how can you step into it? Because I think, when I ask them directly, how are you contributing to the conflict, they can get very defensive. So I have to use language that's different. One of the books that I return to time and again is called Maybe It's You. And it's very generous, but we got to sometimes ask that question, what are you
Mhm.
doing to contribute
Mhm.
to the situation?
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, when people are moving from married to divorce, the hard truth is you have even less control over your co-parent when you're not living together, when you're not forced to be in negotiation continually. So you have your force to work with. What am I going to do about this?
Right.
Because once they're out of your house and you're legally disconnected and financially disconnected, you got nothing except yourself. And so it is really such an important question. And I use a lot of humor. Like I said, I use a lot of self-disclosure and self-deprecation to help people feel normal about the fact that they participate in the struggle. But you can't, looking at one of the common ones that a lot of couples get into is the over-functioning, under-functioning dynamic of
Mhm.
a partner who feels like they do everything in the household.
Yes.
They coordinate camps and they coordinate doctors and they make lunches and all that sort of stuff. And it's so unfair that this happens. And the truth is, you can't have an under functioner without an over functioner, and you can't have an over functioner without an under functioner. Those two roles need each other. And so if you want your under functioning partner to function more, you have to let them. You have
Yeah.
to encourage them, and you have to accept that they might do it in a way that isn't exactly how you do it. And when
Right.
people are honest with themselves, they recognize, oh yeah, I do it because I like the way I do it better. I like the control. And so then you can relax the conflict around it because you own that, well, I'm doing it because I like how I do it better.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you 100% there because I get that a lot in my coaching space. And one thing I sometimes ask is, so, who's better at that thing that you do that you think you do too much of and they do too little of? And if you actually think that you are the better operator in that field, then why
Mhm.
wouldn't you take on that role? Like if you were
Exactly.
in business, if you were in a business, you give the person who has the most skill in a particular space the job of doing that
Yep.
job.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I shift people to thinking like if this is a business relationship, which co-parenting essentially is,
Yep.
because you're not in a romantic relationship, but you're in the business of raising healthy, happy, secure children. So,
Yep.
how do you do that? And who
Mhm.
does what better? And if
Mhm.
you already have all the relationships with the doctors, maybe you keep those relationships.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
if you're the one who always made the play dates, maybe you continue doing that. And if you don't hide the phone numbers of the people that you want. Don't say, well, you don't even know their phone numbers, obviously. But
Right.
these are some games that people sometimes play to establish that one or the other is a better or worse co-parent.
Yeah.
And how are you manufacturing a situation? That's really powerful.
It is really powerful and it's painful. And you have to, I mean, that's the bulk of our job is creating a safe relationship with our clients in the container, coaching container or therapy container, where they feel safe to relax in and be themselves and recognize, oh, yeah, I kind of really do like being in charge of that aspect of things. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But you got to be honest about the situation first and foremost to look at what's changeable, what do I want to change, and what do
Mhm.
I really honestly not want to change. And then if I
Right?
don't want it to change, why am I so mad about it?
No, and I hear that all the time. And it's
Mhm.
again like I'm learning more as I hear more and more conversations where people are saying that this one does so much less than that one. Like let's really analyze what do you want here?
Mhm.
Because in divorce, you may want to be still in charge of certain things. Or you may feel less secure in certain roles and be okay letting the other parent do more in a certain area. And this is how we navigate life. This is
Mhm.
about the connection that you talk about. Um,
Mhm.
and I was really intrigued by um, the curiosity and connection space that you spoke about in your TEDx Hartford talk.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I've been trained, the co-parenting work that I do, we start our foundational conversation is, let's trade judgment for curiosity.
Yes.
And, this is the key to releasing some of the conflict and it has to be this way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Humans are, go ahead.
no, it's so hard. It's so hard. And so I don't tell my clients this is easy work. I know that, whomever I might have a conflict with, when I'm in the middle of that conversation and that person is coming at me and I want to come at them, it takes a lot of work to pause and say, I wonder what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard one, but it's so effective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's so hard, and it goes against, this is going into the neuroscience. It goes against one of our primal drives, which is survival. And survival is keeping ourselves alive, keeping ourselves safe. And what feels safe, and this is at both a conscious and an unconscious level, is to be right, to be holding on to the facts, the data, the specifics, the truths, and to be right, to win the argument. And that leads us into the stories we have, the things we think, the beliefs we have. And that takes us away from curiosity, which is the window to everything. You can lean into the story of what you think you know about your partner or your ex-partner, but that doesn't bridge anything. It doesn't model anything. It doesn't expand everything. It just closes things down. The door is shut between you and them.
Yeah.
When you can be curious about what you don't know, and there's always more we can learn, to what is really happening. What are they really thinking? What do they want? What are their values? What's important to them? All of that stuff can lead you to a much easier resolution than just staying and holding on to what you think you know.
Yeah, it's so true. And it's a tough one. I'm going back in my marriage and remembering that I thought that I was the person who knew my ex-husband better than anyone, maybe even better than he knew himself, right? That was the story that was in my head. I could predict, but that's because I kept on behaving the same way. So yeah, I could predict, but that didn't mean I was given an opportunity for different behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you said something interesting because, in a lot of ways, in a healthy, secure, functioning partnership, the partners can know each other better than the person knows themselves, because we're in our own head and we don't see our nervous system reacting. Where if I'm paying attention to you as my partner, I can notice how your nervous system works when it gets excited negatively or when it starts to shut down, and I can intervene and help you in that way. So we do have the possibility of knowing each other better than we know ourselves, but we can also think we know more than we do, that I know why you're doing something, and then it stops me from being curious. But that lack of curiosity is the number one killer for intimacy and for deep connection. We stop being curious about our partner. We stop being interested in knowing them. And we stop being interested in our ex-partner. And it's not because, I'm not suggesting anyone be curious about their ex-partner for friendship or for romance or anything like that. But knowing them better helps your kid, because that is, your kid is half of that person, whether biologically or not. That's their parent. And knowing them well and supporting them and being their best self models something critical to the kid, that we are interested in people that are different from us. We are curious and compassionate to all people. That is creating better citizens, and that is a dying art. Curiosity is very, very hard to find out in the world now. Everybody's very determined to be right.
Yes.
And the people that are different from us are bad and dangerous. And so turning up the curiosity is in service to everybody.
Yes.
Most especially ourselves.
I know. But this is a good place for us to pause. I will bring us back, but We're going to have a short break, 30 seconds from our sponsor, and then we'll be back with our wonderful guest, Carolyn Sharp. And we're back with Carolyn Sharp, couples therapist, LICSW. So what does the I stand for?
Independent, licensed independent clinical social worker.
Okay, thank you very much. I was curious, so I asked. So one of the things that I think is so important is this idea of curiosity, right? We often, like the world we're living in has this lack of curiosity. But when we go to the smaller and smaller units of community, going down to the community of a marriage, it's really hard if that foundation has no curiosity. Because how do you build it and how do you model it for your children to go in different areas where you can start to develop an authentic and honest curiosity?
Yeah.
And that's a challenging thing. So how can you get couples to reset toward curiosity?
The first thing is to acknowledge that it isn't present. So again, that honesty of recognizing, okay, we have been stuck in a conflict loop or a defend and protect loop or a get what I want loop, and we're not focused on turning on the curiosity, being interested in engaging with each other. So the first thing is acknowledging where they're at. And then the next is, I usually bring them back to an earlier time in their relationship to remember what it felt like to be that curious, to have those sparkly conversations where conversation was flowing and how that felt, and help them recognize that curiosity was one of the drivers to building the relationship and to the fun that they had. And once they recognize that, then they're able to get back some of the interest in being curious and the value in it. But we have to establish safety, that you have to want the real information, the true information, the curiosity about the true information, more than wanting the answers that you want. So if I ask you a question and I want a certain answer, I'm not actually curious. I'm driven by agenda. And that's another place of recognizing, helping the couple recognize when they are operating from that. You know, do you like the food that I cooked? Do I actually want the truth? Am I actually curious, or am I just looking for a yes, thank you? And being honest with ourselves about that so that we can promote genuine curiosity, genuine interest in one another. And then I usually lead them through exercises, practice, which everybody like cringes, like, oh God, you're going to have me role play. No, it's not really role playing. It is learning a skill, because relationships are made up of relationship skills. And many of us were not taught healthy relationship skills. And many of us don't practice our relationship skills. And like anything, practice is what makes us grow. Makes them easier. And so I demonstrate and I guide couples through, and it's very humbling, because everybody realizes how difficult it is to actually do good listening, good communication, repair, curiosity. All of those things take practice, and having the support does help them do it.
Yeah. Oh, I see it all the time, because in the work that I do in co-parenting, we really work hard to develop the skill of active listening. And in one of our exercises, we have one parent share their feelings when something happens and what they need. And then the other parent is required to repeat it back, to not think about the question, not think about the comeback, to just, what I heard you say was, did I get that right?
Yes.
And that may seem like it's like a contortion of communication, but it actually is a skill that will help you everywhere you
Mhm.
go.
Everywhere you go. Yeah. And it's again very humbling because everybody in the world thinks they're a good listener and almost nobody is. Because, most of us, as you're talking, I'm starting to think about what I'm going to say in response. And the moment I start thinking about my response, I have stopped listening to you
Yes.
because your brain can't listen and respond simultaneously.
No.
And it is very hard for the brain to turn off that impulse to rebuttal, to respond, to ask a question, all of that stuff. And so having couples build a muscle memory for that actual practice of listening, the listening exercise that I teach that's in my book, everybody names as the game changer for their relationship, because that's the thing that teaches and creates the safety for that curiosity to take hold. And that is what builds the intimacy and all of the things.
Yeah, and you named something that's really important here, that the safety to get curious.
Mhm,
Because in some relationships, you don't feel safe and
mhm,
you don't feel like you can even be vulnerable to ask the question. Because what if that
mhm.
answer is not comfortable?
Right.
What if? And you're imagining maybe the most uncomfortable answer, which makes it even scarier to ask the question and get
Mhm,
curious.
mhm,
But that's when maybe it's time to take a step back and say, what am I so nervous about? What am I
mhm,
afraid might happen?
mhm,
And
mhm,
that takes self-awareness too.
mhm,
So, your work is so on point in helping couples start to identify where their blocks are so they
mhm,
can start getting curious.
mhm. Well, and all of this is to help our kids.
Mhm.
Uh, and whether couples stay married or don't, that is not even really my business as a couples therapist. Of course, I hope everybody gets healthier and healthier relationships, but sometimes the healthiest thing for a couple is to
Yeah.
take their separate ways. But regardless, we carry our trauma, our difficulty, our challenges. It actually genetically gets passed to our kids unless we fix it. So, healing that part of myself that can't listen to you, that gets defensive if you ask me a question, that, thinks I'm right all the time, all of that gets passed to our kids, both as a behavior that they model, but also it genetically, that the epigenetics that we have been studying is something that we know the science now backs up. So you want to fix it for your kids so your kids are moving on and developing past us in
Yeah.
whatever form your relationship takes.
I mean, that's really huge because when we say it's genetically passed down, it's like the tendency, the reliability to go get stuck in that pattern is
Mhm,
what's passed down. So when we
mhm,
can model a different pattern, I won't even
mhm,
say unlearning a pattern. We need to replace one pattern with a
mhm,
different pattern.
mhm,
So if the old pattern was, let's just yell at each other until we get too tired and have to go into our own corners, and the
mhm,
new pattern is, I'm going to ask a question here.
mhm.
I'm going to pause before I
Yep,
move forward.
yep,
And
yep.
that goes against our biological impulses
Mhm,
based on the nervous system.
yep, yep.
So how does it work to infuse these new habits when our nervous system is encouraging us to do something different?
Well, we slow it down. So, the brain wants to speed up when it goes into fight or flight, when we start to perceive that there's a threat. And I don't mean that in the physical sense, though that would be obvious. But in the emotional sense, if I sense that you're going to be mad, my brain starts speeding up and figuring out how can I get out? How can I get out? And so, in these processes, just like in the active listening exercise, you are slowing the conversation down. You talk, then you reflect, then you check in. It's a slowed down version that helps the brain stretch it out so that we can intervene. And the couples in my office are facing each other rather than looking at me. They're facing each other so that they can pick up, oh, my partner is tensing up. And I do this with parents and kids, I do this with co-parents.
Mhm.
They're facing each other so they can catch the visual cues that the nervous system is starting to activate, so we can slow it down, or we can offer reassurance for couples or for parents and kids who are in a you know a friendly relationship, there might be physical contact, holding a hand, or rubbing a back, or something to help provide that physical reassurance that settles the nervous system. Or I coach them through moderating their volume or their tone, the speed of their voice, to help balance it out and slow it down, to recognize, normalize that this happens, and to help intervene before it gets too late. Because, we all have a different nervous system pattern going. Some of us are slow. I'm a slow to boil. So it takes me a long time to get out of my window of tolerance to get to a place where I'm an ugly mess. But once I'm there, like, clear the decks, get out of the house. And so go ahead.
Yeah. No. It's also different people gear up your nervous system in different timelines. Yes. So there may be that one person who it starts at 50, like you're going from 0 to 100, but you're starting at 50 and you're getting to 100 much faster because you're anticipating the conflict and or putting your armor on, because you got to protect yourself. And if you walk in saying, I need my protection, I'm not going to give much.
Right.
That sets you up for accelerating the conflict.
Yep. And we come with our cultural programming. I was raised outside New York. My husband was raised in Southern California. Very different cultures around conflict and around communication. In my family, it was a lot of sarcasm and direct, just direct feedback. In his family, very around the block, around the bush, like just sort of like tiptoeing. And so I had to learn that my way of giving feedback didn't work well with my husband's nervous system. I had to modulate that so that I didn't set him off every time I said, hey, can you clean the counter differently? We carry these culturally bound, culturally raised norms, and that's not good or bad. It just is what it is. And you want to learn to work with the nervous system your partner has, rather than just expect them to operate like you do. And this is one of the things that almost all couples do. I want you to operate the way I do, and you should operate the way I do. Well, no.
No two people do that.
Yep.
And that's the thing. We all are created from the same stuff, but our centers, our spirits, our souls are different. And we can't, even if we're raised in the exact same home environment, it's never exactly the same, because I'm reflecting off the rest of the people in my family and they're reflecting off of me. So it's a different reflection.
Yes.
So, as someone who grew up and continues to be an identical twin, who grew up in the same room with my identical twin, and today is our birthday. So
happy birthday.
We're different. And, growing up, it was hard to feel so different from someone who looked exactly like me, and not in a negative way, but it was just, we had different perspectives. But what my dad told me, which became a mantra, was like, you didn't grow up exactly alike, because she looked at you and you looked at her, and that was different.
Yeah.
So we are all unique individuals, even if we have the same DNA. And that's something that when you're marrying someone from a different family and who grew up even slightly different, you have to modulate your values, your language, your tone, so that you learn the dance that moves most smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you co-create the values, your shared values, and your relationship purpose and your relationship goals. And I recommend this for my parents that are splitting up, the couples that are splitting up that are going to be co-parenting. What is your goal as a co-parenting unit? What is your goal for your life and your relationship? What are the values you're moving forward? All of that stuff, so that you can hold yourselves accountable to, all right, we said we wanted to raise a kind, diverse, a well-rounded kid. There's the word I'm looking for. And we wanted to model kindness. Am I modeling kindness? No.
Right.
Then you can hold yourself accountable to that. We set the goals. No one forced you. You set the goals. So it's a really powerful thing for all people to have those goals that help us stay on track for what we want to
Yeah,
achieve in our life.
100%. And it sounds so similar in my work, in my co-parenting work. We say, what's your why? Start with why. Quoting
Yeah.
Simon Sinek, that if my purpose, my why, is to raise safe and secure kids, and so is my co-parents, how does this conflict meet that need and that why? And then we
Yes.
can step back and say, all right, what is a better way for me to do this, to approach it? What are better words I can use? And it's hard, but it's a practice. Like yoga is a practice, language, communication is a practice.
Relationships are a practice.
100%. Yeah.
100%.
So
Yeah.
we're, believe it or not, at the end of time. As I said at the beginning, we could talk forever. I definitely am going to have you back because there are so many more topics. Tell us, what is the one thing that you'd like our audience to take away from this episode when it comes to co-parenting?
Well, there's a famous quote by Harville Hendricks. We are born in relationship, we are harmed in relationship, and we are healed in relationship. It is relationships through which we learn, we grow, we evolve, we thrive. So don't take your relationships for granted. Not your relationships with your kid, not your relationship with yourself, not your relationship with your co-parent. All of them matter. All of them have lessons for you if you pay attention to them. And they aren't usually what you think they are.
I love that. I love that. Don't take your relationships for granted. Huge. That is a
Huge.
great why. My
Yes.
why is I will not take my relationships for granted.
If I've convinced you, my job is I can retire for the day. That's
for the day.
for the day.
So tell my audience how they can find you.
So I am available through both of my websites because I'm a therapist and a coach. There are two separate websites. CarolynSharp.com is my therapy website. Secure Connections Retreats is my coaching website. And I am on Instagram and LinkedIn and TikTok at the Secure Connections Coach.
I love that. I love that. And you can look Carolyn up. She did a TEDx Hartford talk, which is really powerful. I think you'll enjoy it. I know I did. So thank you again, Carolyn, for being here. And for my audience, thank you for coming. You can always find me at zlcoaching.com. I offer complimentary 30-minute consults. We'll talk and we'll get curious about what's going on in your story. So until next time, I'm Lisa Lisser, and this is the Divorce Clarity Studio.